Hi, I'm Linda Evans, 68 years old. This morning, my daughter looked me dead in the eye and said, "Cancel your doctor's appointment and take me to my game house." When I said no, her hand came flying across my face so hard I nearly fell. Then my son-in-law said the words that shattered something inside me forever: "Her future matters. Yours never did." If you've ever felt invisible to your own family, stay until the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this story ends in a way they never saw coming. You know, when you spend your entire life building someone else's world, you don't realize how small yours has become until the walls finally close in completely. That's what happened to me. 68 years on this earth, and I spent at least 40 of them sacrificing every single piece of myself for a daughter who learned to take before she learned to say thank you. And the worst part? I taught her that. I taught her that my needs didn't matter. That my dreams were negotiable. That my pain was something to step over on her way to whatever she wanted next. Let me take you back so you understand how deep this goes. My daughter Jessica, she's 32 now, she was my only child. Her father left when she was 3, just vanished one Tuesday morning like smoke. And suddenly I was alone with a toddler, 2 jobs, and a mountain of bills that grew taller every month. I worked as a nurse's aide during the day, cleaning up after people who couldn't remember my name, and at night I cleaned office buildings downtown. I remember those nights so clearly it still hurts. My knees aching on those cold tile floors, my hands raw from chemicals, watching the city lights through those big glass windows and wondering if anyone out there was watching back. Wondering if anyone saw me. But I did it. I did it because that's what mothers do, right? We're supposed to sacrifice. We're supposed to give until there's nothing left, and then we're supposed to smile and say it was all worth it. So I worked myself into exhaustion, month after month, year after year. I missed parent-teacher conferences because I couldn't afford to lose those hours. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation for 5 years because every extra dollar went into Jessica's future. When all the other kids had name-brand sneakers, so did she. When her classmates went to summer camp, I made sure she could go too, even if it meant I spent that summer eating rice and beans for every single meal. I put her in piano lessons even though we didn't own a piano. She quit after 4 months. I enrolled her in dance classes at the fancy studio across town. She quit that too. Swimming, soccer, art classes, tutoring for subjects she was already passing, whatever she wanted, I found a way. I worked double shifts so she could go to a private school, that prestigious academy on the north side where all the wealthy families sent their children. I'll never forget the look on her face when I told her she got in. For about 10 seconds, I saw something that might have been gratitude. Then she asked if I could also pay for the school trip to Washington, D.C. in the spring. Of course I said yes. I always said yes. When she went to college, I took out loans in my name because her scholarship only covered half. I co-signed for her apartment even though I was living in a 1-bedroom place that smelled like mildew and had heating that only worked half the winter. I sent her money every month for books, for food, for emergencies that seemed to happen every other week. And you know what? She graduated. She walked across that stage in her cap and gown, and I sat in the bleachers with tears streaming down my face thinking, we did it. All those years, all that sacrifice, it was worth it because my baby girl made something of herself. Except she didn't thank me at the ceremony. She thanked her professors, her friends, and her boyfriend at the time. I waited for my name. It never came. But I told myself it was fine. She was young, excited, overwhelmed. There would be time for gratitude later. There's always time later, right? Wrong. There's never a time when someone doesn't want to make time. After college, Jessica got into social media. Started filming herself playing video games, doing makeup tutorials, talking about her life. At first, I thought it was just a hobby, something fun she did on the side while she looked for a real job. But then it started growing. Thousands of followers, then tens of thousands. Companies started sending her products. She started making money, actual money, just from posting videos of herself. And I was happy for her. I really was. My daughter found something she loved, something that made her feel special. What mother wouldn't be proud? Then she met Derek. Her now husband, though I've never been able to call him that without feeling something twist in my stomach. He was another content creator, same world, same platform, same empty promises wrapped in filters and ring lights. They got married 2 years ago, and I used my savings to help with their down payment on a house. Not the whole down payment, they made sure to tell everyone they were self-made, that they'd built their empire from nothing. But I gave them $18,000. $18,000 that I'd been saving for 23 years, money that was supposed to be for my retirement, for the life I'd kept promising myself I'd live someday when things got easier. I handed it over because Jessica said they needed it, because she said this house was an investment in their future, in their brand, in the life they were building together. I wasn't invited to move in with them, even though my lease was up and I'd mentioned maybe it would be nice to be closer, to have family around as I got older. Jessica said their house was really more of a content creation space, that they needed the rooms for filming, for storage, for their business. She said I'd understand. I said of course. I always said of course. I found another small apartment, this one a bit nicer, a bit more expensive, and I stretched my budget thinner to cover it because I didn't want to seem like a burden. I didn't want my daughter to worry about me. But here's the thing about giving everything, eventually, people expect everything. It becomes the baseline. It stops being generous and starts being an obligation. Jessica started calling me only when she needed something. A ride because Derek had the car and she had a brand meeting across town. Money because a sponsorship payment was delayed. Help setting up for a video shoot because their regular assistant canceled. And every single time I showed up. Every time I rearranged my life, my schedule, my needs, because that's what I'd been doing for 40 years and I didn't know how to stop. My health started declining about 2 years ago. Little things at first. Fatigue didn't go away no matter how much I slept. Chest pains that I kept dismissing as stress or heartburn. Shortness of breath climbing stairs. I mentioned it to Jessica once, casually, during one of our brief phone calls. She said I should probably see a doctor and then immediately change the subject to tell me about a brand deal she'd just landed. I made an appointment, but I had to cancel it because she needed me to watch their house while they went to some influencer convention in Las Vegas. She said they couldn't afford to hire anyone and I was the only person they trusted. So I canceled. I rescheduled for 3 months later. Canceled again because Jessica had a minor medical scare. She thought she had food poisoning, but it turned out to be nothing, and she needed me to come stay with her and help with the house while she recovered. She was better in 2 days, but by then my appointment slot was gone. The doctor's office had a waiting list. I got back on it. 6 more months. Every time I got sick, every time I mentioned feeling unwell, Jessica said she was too busy. Too busy to visit, too busy to call more than 5 minutes, too busy to ask follow-up questions. Her content schedule was packed. Derek was launching a new channel. They were renovating their gaming room. They were planning a big collaboration with other creators. There was always something more important than my health, more urgent than my pain. And I let it be. God help me, I let it be because I didn't want to be the nagging mother, the burden, the one who made everything about herself. Finally, after 1.5 years of rescheduling and waiting and pushing through symptoms that got worse every month, I got an appointment with a cardiologist. A real one, at a real hospital, for a full workup. They were concerned about my heart. The words the nurse used over the phone were significant irregularities and potential blockages. She said they needed to run tests, possibly do a scan, maybe a biopsy depending on what they found. The appointment was scheduled for 8 in the morning on a Wednesday. I'd waited 7 months for this slot. 7 months of fear sitting in my chest like a stone, fear that I was dying slowly and no one cared enough to notice. I told Jessica about the appointment 2 weeks in advance. I didn't ask her to come with me. I'd learned long ago not to expect that, but I mentioned it because I thought she should know. She said, "Oh, okay Mom, hope it goes well," and then spent the next 20 minutes telling me about a new gamehouse concept she and Derek were launching, some live-streamed event space where they'd film content with other influencers. I listened. I always listened. The night before my appointment, I could barely sleep. Fear has a way of filling up every empty space in the dark, doesn't it? I lay in bed thinking about all the possibilities, all the things the doctor might say, all the ways my body might be failing me. I thought about calling Jessica, just to hear her voice, just to feel less alone. But it was late and I knew she'd be annoyed. So I lay there in the dark with my fear and told myself that tomorrow I'd get answers, that tomorrow I'd finally know what was wrong, that tomorrow I could start fixing whatever was broken inside me. I got up at 5:30 in the morning. Showered, even though I wasn't supposed to wear any lotions or perfumes for the tests. Put on comfortable clothes, comfortable shoes. My hands were shaking as I made coffee I wasn't allowed to drink. The appointment was at 8 and the hospital was 40 minutes away, but I wanted to leave early, wanted to make sure I had plenty of time, wanted to make absolutely sure I didn't miss this appointment that had taken so long to get. At 6:45, my phone rang. Jessica. My heart lifted for just a second. Maybe she was calling to wish me luck, maybe she remembered, maybe this time would be different. I answered and heard chaos in the background, Derek yelling something about camera equipment, Jessica's voice sharp with stress. "Mom, I need you to do me a huge favor," she said, "no hello, no how are you, just straight into the need. Derek and I have this massive opportunity today. We're shooting at this gamehouse downtown with 3 other creators, it's for a huge campaign, and our ride just completely flaked on us. Derek's car is in the shop and we can't get an Uber because we have so much equipment. We need you to drive us." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Jessica, honey, I have my doctor's appointment this morning. The one I told you about. The heart specialist." "I know, Mom, but this is really important. This campaign is worth like $20,000. This could change everything for us. Can't you just reschedule?" I held the phone tighter, my knuckles going white. "I've rescheduled 4 times already. I've waited 7 months for this appointment. The doctor said it's urgent." "Mom, you're fine. You've been saying you're sick for like 2 years and you're still here, still walking around. 1 more week isn't going to kill you. But if we miss this shoot, we lose the contract. We lose the money. We lose the exposure. This is our career, Mom. Our future. You don't understand how this industry works. You can't just blow off opportunities like this." The pain in my chest wasn't from my heart condition this time. It was something else, something sharper, something that felt like it was tearing me open from the inside. "Jessica, I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't cancel this appointment again. I'm scared. I need to know what's wrong with me." Her voice went cold. "So you're saying no? You're saying no to your own daughter when I'm asking you for help? After everything I've done for you? After everything she'd done for me?" The words hit like a slap. After everything she'd done for me. As if I hadn't spent 4 decades building her life with my bare hands. As if I hadn't worked myself to the bone so she could have everything I never did. As if every single sacrifice I'd made had somehow been erased, rewritten, transformed into debts I owed her instead. "Jessica, that's not fair." "Whatever, Mom. I have to go. We'll figure it out ourselves." We always do. She hung up. I stood there in my small apartment, phone in hand, heart hammering in my chest, tears already starting to blur my vision. I told myself it was fine. She was stressed. Big opportunity. I'd go to my appointment, and later, when things calmed down, we'd talk and she'd understand. She'd remember that I had needs too, that my health mattered too. She'd apologize. I should have known better. At 7:15, someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of aggressive hammering that makes your whole door shake in its frame. I opened it and Jessica pushed past me, Derek right behind her, both of them carrying bags of camera equipment, ring lights, tripods. They tracked into my apartment like they owned it, like I'd invited them, like this was normal. "We'll just leave this stuff here and you can drop it off on the way," Jessica said, her back to me, already assuming I'd agreed, already rewriting reality to fit what she wanted. "Jessica, I told you." She spun around, and that's when I saw her face. Really saw it. There was no love there. No warmth. No recognition of me as a person, as her mother, as anything other than an obstacle between her and what she wanted. Her eyes were hard, her jaw set, her whole body vibrating with barely contained rage. "Cancel your doctor's appointment and take me to my game house," she said, each word deliberate, sharp, a command not a request. Something in me, something that had been bending for 40 years, finally locked into place. No. The word hung in the air between us. Simple. Final. The first time in my entire life I'd said it to her without softening it, without apologizing, without following it up with an explanation or an excuse or a promise to make it up to her later. "What did you just say to me?" Her voice was low, dangerous. I said no, Jessica. I'm not canceling my appointment. I'm not driving you anywhere. I've waited too long for this. I'm scared and I'm in pain and I need to see this doctor. She took a step toward me and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Pure, undiluted fury. Her hand came up and I didn't have time to move, didn't have time to protect myself, didn't have time to do anything but feel the impact as her palm connected with my cheek so hard my head snapped to the side. The sound was impossibly loud in my small apartment. The pain came half a second later, radiating from my face through my whole skull. I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the corner of my Kit Martinez counter, my hand flying up to my cheek in shock. I nearly fell. Would have fallen if I hadn't caught myself on the counter. My ears were ringing. My face was on fire. I looked up at my daughter through tears I couldn't control and saw her standing there, breathing hard, her hand still raised like she might hit me again, like once wasn't enough to make her point. "Jessica," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You hit me. Because you're being selfish," she screamed. "You're always so fucking selfish. Everything is always about you, about your problems, about your needs." "What about my needs? What about my career? What about my future?" Derek stepped forward then, putting his hand on Jessica's shoulder like he was comforting her, like she was the victim in this moment, like she was the one who'd just been struck. He looked at me with such contempt, such complete dismissal, that I felt something inside me crack clean through. "Her future matters," he said, his voice calm, measured, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. "Yours never did. Her future matters. Yours never did." The words didn't make sense at first. I heard them, but they didn't connect, didn't compute. I stood there with my hand on my burning cheek, my hip aching from where I'd hit the counter, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out, and I tried to understand how we'd gotten here. How the baby girl I'd rocked to sleep every night, the toddler I'd read to until my voice gave out, the child I'd protected from every possible harm, had grown into this person standing in my apartment telling me I'd never mattered. "Get out," I said quietly. Jessica laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, now you're going to be dramatic? You're going to kick us out over this? You're unbelievable. Get out of my apartment. We'll leave when we're ready, Derek said. We need to figure out our transportation situation since you're too selfish to help your own daughter. They stood there, both of them, in my home, surrounded by my things, breathing my air, taking up my space, and discussed me like I wasn't even there. Like I was furniture. Like I was wallpaper. Like I was nothing. I walked past them. My legs felt like they might give out, but I kept moving, kept walking, into my bedroom. I pulled out the small suitcase I used for weekend trips and started packing. Clothes. Toiletries. My medications. My insurance cards. My phone charger. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the bag. I could hear them in the other room, still talking, still planning their day like they hadn't just destroyed something irreparable between us. When I came back out with my suitcase, they finally stopped talking and looked at me. "What are you doing?" Jessica asked. I didn't answer. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and checked my pocket for my phone. I had everything I needed. Everything important. "Mom, seriously, where are you going? You're being ridiculous." I looked at her one last time. My daughter. My baby. The person I'd loved more than my own life for 32 years. And I felt nothing. The love was still there somewhere, buried deep, but it was surrounded by so much pain, so much disappointment, so much bone-deep exhaustion that I couldn't access it anymore. I couldn't let myself access it. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "You're leaving? You're leaving your own apartment because of a little argument? You're so overdramatic, Mom. Seriously. We'll just find another ride. You can go to your stupid appointment." Jesus. A little argument. She'd called it a little argument. I touched my face and my fingers came away wet. I hadn't even realized I was crying. The skin was hot, probably already bruising. A little argument that left marks. A little argument that broke something fundamental between a mother and daughter. They didn't know it yet, I said out loud, my voice steady for the first time that morning, but that was the last time they'd ever see me under their roof. What? Jessica's face twisted in confusion. I walked to the door, opened it, stepped through. Jessica called after me, but I didn't turn around. Derek said something sarcastic that I didn't bother processing. I pulled the door closed behind me, heard the lock click, and kept walking. Down the hallway. Down the stairs. Out into the parking lot where my old car sat waiting. I threw my suitcase in the back seat, got behind the wheel, and sat there for a moment, just breathing. My face hurt. My hip hurts. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with my heart condition and everything to do with the complete obliteration of the relationship I'd valued most in my entire life. But underneath all that pain, underneath the tears and the shock and the disbelief, there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Relief. I drove to the hospital. Made it with 20 minutes to spare. Sat in the waiting room with my throbbing cheek and my racing thoughts and filled out paperwork with shaking hands. When they called my name, I stood up and followed the nurse down the hallway, into the examination room, and I waited. The doctor who came in was a woman in her 50s, kind eyes behind glasses, the sort of calm competence that makes you feel safe even when you're terrified. She introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Martinez and shook my hand warmly. Then she looked at my face and her expression changed. "Mrs. Evans, what happened to your cheek?" I'd forgotten about the mark. Forgotten that violence leaves evidence. I raised my hand to touch it and winced. "It's nothing. It's nothing." Dr. Martinez pulled her stool closer and studied my face with professional concern. "That's a handprint. Someone struck you." Recently. Within the last few hours. The kindness in her voice broke something open in me. All morning I'd been holding it together, holding everything in, staying strong enough to walk away, to drive here, to keep moving forward. But something about the way she said it, the matter-of-fact acknowledgement that yes, someone had hurt me, that yes, it was wrong, that yes, she saw me, it all came pouring out. I told her everything. The whole sorry story. 40 years of sacrifice spilling out in this sterile examination room to a stranger who listened without judgment, without interruption, without telling me I was being dramatic or selfish or unfair. I told her about the double shifts and the private school and the loans and the down payment. I told her about the appointments I'd cancelled and the needs I'd suppressed and the slow disappearance of my own life. I told her about this morning, about the slap, about Derek's words, about walking out with my suitcase and nowhere to go. By the time I finished, I was sobbing. Dr. Martinez handed me tissues and waited until I could breathe again. "I'm going to run the tests we discussed," she said gently. "But first, with your permission, I'd like to bring in someone else. We have a social worker on staff who specializes in elder abuse and financial exploitation. What you've described raises some serious concerns beyond the physical assault." Elder abuse. The words made me flinch. That was something that happened to other people, vulnerable people, people who couldn't take care of themselves. Not me. I was fine. I was managing. Except I wasn't. I hadn't been fine for years. The social worker's name was Marcus Johnson, a man in his 30s with a gentle voice and the kind of patience that comes from dealing with difficult situations every single day. He sat down with me after the initial tests were done, while we waited for the results, and asked me questions that made my skin crawl because I knew where they were leading. Did Jessica have access to my bank accounts? Yes, I'd added her years ago, just in case of emergency. Did I have any retirement funds? Yes, a small 401k from my years working at the hospital, and a pension I'd been paying into. Have I checked those accounts recently? No, not in months. Maybe a year. Did Jessica or Derek know about these accounts? Yes, I'd mentioned them when they were planning their house purchase. Marcus asked if he could look into my financial records. I gave him permission because at that point, what did I have to lose? He stepped out of the room and made some calls. Dr. Martinez came back in to go over the test results. They'd found blockages, yes, serious ones. I'd need medication and possibly a procedure, but I'd caught it in time. I was going to be okay, and I barely heard her because I was thinking about Marcus and his questions and the sick feeling growing in my stomach. Marcus came back an hour later with a folder full of papers and an expression that made me want to throw up. "Mrs. Evans, I need to show you something. You might want to sit down." I was already sitting, but I gripped the arms of the chair anyway. He spread the papers out on the tray table in front of me. Bank statements. Withdrawal records. Electronic transfers. Each page was highlighted, marked, annotated with dates and amounts. Over the last 2 years, Marcus said carefully, someone has been systematically withdrawing money from your accounts. Small amounts at first, then increasingly large ones. Your retirement fund has been completely drained. Your 401k has been borrowed against the maximum allowed. Your pension benefits have been redirected to a different account. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. Thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. Money I'd saved for 40 years, money that was supposed to keep me safe in my old age, money that was supposed to be there when I couldn't work anymore. Gone. All of it is gone. The account the money was transferred to belongs to Derek Stevenson, Marcus continued. Your son-in-law. Based on the dates and amounts, and the fact that your daughter has power of attorney over your financial accounts, it appears they've been using your identity and your resources to fund their lifestyle and their business. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The betrayal I'd felt this morning was nothing compared to this. This was systematic. This was planned. This wasn't a moment of anger or a cruel word thrown in frustration. This was 2 years of theft, of lies, of looking me in the face and pretending to love me while they robbed me blind. How much? I whispered. How much did they take? Marcus looked at his papers. Including the direct withdrawals, the redirected pension, and the 401k loan they took out in your name, approximately $247,000. The room tilted. $247,000. My entire life's savings. Every sacrifice, every extra shift, every skipped meal and patched coat and cancelled vacation. Everything I'd built for myself, the only security I had in this world. Stolen by my own daughter and the man she married. They also took out a credit card in your name, Marcus said quietly. It's maxed out. About $32,000 in debt. You're liable for that. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Hysterical, broken laughter that hurt my chest and made Dr. Martinez look at me with concern. They'd stolen my money and buried me in debt and told me my future never mattered. They'd built their pretty house and their game room and their influencer careers on the ruins of my life, and they'd done it all while I smiled and said yes and told myself I was helping. What do I do? I asked when I could finally speak again. What can I do? Marcus pulled out another paper. You can press charges. For elder financial abuse, identity theft, fraud. Given the amounts involved and the evidence, this is a serious criminal case. I've already contacted a detective I work with. She'd like to speak with you, if you're willing. You can also file for a restraining order based on the physical assault this morning. The mark on your face is documented in your medical records now. Will they go to jail? Possibly. Probably. At minimum, they'll face serious legal consequences. They'll have to pay restitution, though given what you've told me about their finances, that may take years. But Mrs. Evans, I need you to understand, this won't be easy. This is your daughter. The legal process will be difficult and painful. Are you prepared for that? I looked down at the papers, at the evidence of everything they'd taken from me, and I thought about this morning. About the slap. About Derek's words. About 40 years of giving and giving and giving until there was nothing left of me but an empty shape that used to be a person. Her future matters, I said softly. Yours never did. I looked up at Marcus and Dr. Martinez, and I felt something settle in my chest. Something cold and hard and absolutely certain. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Tell me what I need to do. The next 3 weeks were a blur of lawyers and police stations and interviews. The detective Marcus connected me with, Detective Sarah Williams, was thorough and compassionate. She gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, built a case that was apparently, in her words, slam dunk. Jessica and Derek had been sloppy. They'd left digital trails everywhere. Text messages about the money. Emails with financial advisors. Social media posts showing off purchases they shouldn't have been able to afford. They'd been so confident I'd never notice, never check, never stand up for myself, that they hadn't bothered covering their tracks. I stayed in a women's shelter at first, just until I could figure out my living situation. The retirement money was gone, but I still had my pension payments. Once we got them redirected back to my account, and I qualified for some assistance programs I'd never known existed. Marcus helped me navigate all of it, helped me understand that needing help wasn't shameful, that I'd paid into these systems my entire working life and was entitled to use them. Jessica called 67 times in those first 3 weeks. Left voicemails that started out angry, turned desperate, then cycled back to angry again. I didn't listen to most of them. Detective Williams advised me not to have any contact, and honestly, I didn't want to. I had nothing to say to her. Nothing she could say would make any of this better or different or forgivable. Derek tried to show up at the shelter once. The security guard turned him away. He screamed in the parking lot about how I was ruining their lives, how I was a vindictive old woman, how I'd regret this. Someone filmed it. It went viral. Their carefully curated image of perfect content creators, loving couple, self-made success story, it cracked wide open for the whole internet to see. Within days, sponsors started dropping them. Brand deals evaporated. Other influencers distanced themselves. The algorithm stopped favoring their content. Everything they'd built, everything they'd stolen my money to create, began to crumble in real time. The criminal charges were filed. Elder abuse, identity theft, financial exploitation, fraud. The prosecutor said these were serious charges with serious consequences. Jessica's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted justice. I wanted them to face the consequences of what they'd done. I wanted them to understand that you can't steal someone's entire life and walk away unscathed. The case went to trial 4 months after that morning in my apartment. I testified. Sat on the stand and told my story to a courtroom full of strangers while Jessica cried at the defense table and Derek stared at me with pure hatred. The prosecutor was brilliant. She walked the jury through every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. She showed them my medical records, the mark on my face, and the documented appointment cancellations. She painted a picture of systematic abuse and exploitation that was impossible to deny. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Found them both guilty on all counts. Jessica got 4 years. Derek got 6. The judge was harsh during sentencing, said she'd seen a lot of financial abuse cases but rarely one this calculated, this cruel. Said that the fact they'd targeted her own mother made it particularly egregious. Ordered full restitution, though everyone knew I'd never see most of that money. It didn't matter. The money had never been the point. The point was that they'd finally faced consequences. The point was that someone had finally looked at my pain and said, "This matters. You matter." Their house went into foreclosure. Turns out when you can't make mortgage payments because your income stream dried up and you're both in prison, banks don't care how many followers you used to have. All their equipment, their furniture, their carefully designed content creation spaces, liquidated to pay legal fees and restitution. The game house they'd been so desperate to get to that morning, the one worth $20,000, the one more important than my health. It shut down. The company running it went bankrupt in a scandal I didn't bother following. Everything they built trying to make a world without me in it collapsed like a house of cards. And me? I took the restitution I did receive, about $40,000 from the liquidation of their assets, and I left the city. Moved to a small coastal town 3 hours away, the kind of place where people say good morning to strangers and the biggest concern is whether the tide is right for clamming. I found a tiny cottage 3 blocks from the beach, close enough that I can hear the waves at night when I open my window. It's small, just 2 rooms and a Kit Martinez, but it's mine. Really mine. No one else has keys. No one else has access to my accounts. No one else gets to decide how I spend my time or my money or my love. I go to my follow-up appointments now. Every single one. Turns out when you actually take your medication and reduce your stress and stop sacrificing your health for people who don't care if you live or die, your body starts healing. The blockages have improved. My blood pressure is down. I can walk on the beach for an hour without getting winded. Dr. Martinez says I'm doing remarkably well, all things considered. Says the human body has an amazing capacity for recovery when you finally give it what it needs. I've started doing things I've never done before. Joined a book club at the local library. Signed up for a watercolor painting class at the community center. I made friends with my neighbor, a widow named Patricia who grows tomatoes and makes the best lemon bars I've ever tasted. We sit on her porch some evenings and watch the sunset and talk about everything and nothing. She knows my story, everyone in town knows my story, the trial made national news, but she doesn't treat me like I'm broken. She treats me like I'm a person who survived something difficult and came out the other side. I take care of myself now. It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. I eat 3 meals a day. I sleep 8 hours a night. I go to the doctor when something hurts instead of pushing through and hoping it'll resolve itself. I spend money on myself without guilt, small things, a new book, a nice dinner, a warm sweater in my favorite color. I say no when I don't want to do something. I say yes when I do. I live my life according to my own needs and desires for the first time in nearly 50 years. Jessica writes me letters from prison. One every few weeks. They all say variations of the same thing. She's sorry, she didn't understand what she was doing, prison has changed her, she wants a relationship with me when she gets out, can I please forgive her? I won't write back. I don't throw the letters away either. I keep them in a box in my closet. Maybe someday I'll read them properly. Maybe someday the pain will have faded enough that I can consider forgiveness. But not today. Not tomorrow. Maybe not ever, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I don't owe her forgiveness. I don't owe her a relationship. I don't owe her anything anymore. I spent 68 years giving her everything, and it nearly killed me. The most loving thing I can do for myself now is to let her go. Derek doesn't write. I'm grateful for that. His hatred was always more honest than Jessica's love ever was. Sometimes late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that morning. About standing in my apartment with my cheek burning and my heart breaking and those words echoing in my head. Her future matters. Yours never did. I think about how close I came to believing it. How many years I'd already spent living like it was true. How easily I could have cancelled that appointment one more time, driven them to their game house, swallowed the slap and the cruelty and kept going like I'd always done. How close I came to dying slowly in service to people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to be used up. But I didn't. Something in me, some small stubborn spark that had survived 40 years of neglect, finally said enough. And that decision, that one moment of choosing myself, saved my life. Not just physically, though the doctors say if I'd waited much longer the blockages could have killed me. But saved my life in all the ways that matter. Give me back my personality. My agency. My right to exist as something more than a supporting character in someone else's story. I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt. It hurts every single day. The grief of losing my daughter isn't to death but to her own choices, her own cruelty. It's a complicated pain that doesn't have easy answers. Some days I miss her so much I can barely breathe. I miss the child she was, the moments when she was small and I was her whole world and love felt simple and pure. I miss the future I thought we'd have, the one where she'd eventually grow up and understand what I'd sacrificed and we'd be close in my old age. I miss the fantasy more than the reality, and that's its own kind of grief. But I don't miss the person she became. I don't miss the anxiety of wondering when she'd call next, what she'd need next, how I'd have to shrink myself next to make room for her demands. I don't miss the constant feeling of inadequacy, of never being enough, of giving everything and still being told it wasn't sufficient. I don't miss being invisible in my own life. The people in this town see me. Really see me. I'm not someone's mother or someone's resource or someone's obligation. I'm Linda. I'm the woman who walks on the beach every morning. The one who's getting pretty good at watercolor sunsets. The one who volunteers at the library on Thursdays and makes the book club laugh with her commentary on romance novels. I'm a person with interests and opinions and values that exist independent of what I can provide to others. Last week, a young woman approached me after a book club. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she had this look on her face that I recognized, fear and hope and desperation all mixed together. She said she'd read about my case online. Said she was living with her parents and they were doing something similar, taking her paychecks, controlling her bank account, isolating her from friends. Said she didn't know how to get out. Didn't know if she was being dramatic or if it was really as bad as it felt. I took her to coffee. Gave her Marcus's number and Detective Williams' contact information. Told her my story, the whole ugly truth of it. Told her that leaving would be hard and painful and people might not understand, but staying would kill something essential in her. Told her that she deserved a life where she wasn't being drained dry by the people who were supposed to love her. She cried. Thank you. Said she didn't know if she was brave enough. I told her she didn't need to be brave, she just needed to be tired enough of the alternative. Tired enough of being invisible. Tired enough of giving pieces of herself away until there was nothing left. I don't know if she'll leave. I hope she does. But I gave her the information and the permission and the understanding that her pain is valid, and sometimes that's enough to plant a seed. Sometimes that's all someone needs to take the first step towards saving themselves. That's what I'm doing now, in this little cottage by the ocean. Saving myself. Rebuilding myself. Learning who Linda is when she's not defined by who she's serving. It's harder than I expected. For so long I was just mom, just the woman who gave and gave and gave, that I don't always know who I am without that identity. But I'm figuring it out. One day, one choice, one tiny act of self-care at a time. I'm learning that I like spicy food. Never cooked it before because Jessica hated it. I'm learning that I'm a morning person who loves watching the sunrise with coffee that's too strong and too sweet. I'm learning that I have opinions about books and politics and art that don't need to be softened or qualified or apologized for. I'm learning that I'm funny, that I can make people laugh, that my company is something others actively seek out rather than tolerate. I'm learning that rest isn't selfish. That saying no isn't cruel. That taking care of myself isn't the same as being self-centered. These lessons come slowly, fighting against 40 years of conditioning, but they come. And each one feels like a small revolution, a tiny rebellion against everything I was taught about what mothers and women and good people are supposed to be. The view from my cottage window right now is extraordinary. The sun is setting over the water, painting everything gold and pink and purple. The waves are steady and rhythmic, eternal and indifferent to human drama. There are seagulls calling and somewhere down the beach I can hear children laughing. It's peaceful in a way I didn't know life could be peaceful. Not the absence of noise but the absence of chaos, of fear, of waiting for the next demand or crisis or disappointment. I have a doctor's appointment next week. Just a regular checkup, routine monitoring of my heart. I'm not afraid. I wrote it in my calendar in bright blue ink and I'll go and I'll get good news because I'm taking care of myself now and my body is responding. No one will call and ask me to cancel. No one will need me to be somewhere else more urgently. No one gets to decide that my health doesn't matter except me, and I've decided it matters very much. Sometimes I think about what I'd say to Jessica if I saw her again. If she got out of prison and showed up on my doorstep with apologies and promises to be different. I've rehearsed it in my head 100 times. Sometimes I imagine myself being cold and cutting, giving her the same dismissal she gave me. Sometimes I imagine myself being understanding, acknowledging that she was young and stupid and influenced by a manipulative man. Sometimes I imagine myself crying and asking her why wasn't I enough, why wasn't my love enough, what did I do wrong that made her think she could treat me that way? But honestly, I don't think I'd say anything at all. I think I'd look at her, this stranger wearing my daughter's face, and I'd close the door. Gently. Finally. Completely. Because I've said everything I needed to say in that courtroom. I've given her 40 years of words and love and chances. I don't have any more to give, and more importantly, I don't want to give them. My words now are for me. My love now is for me. My chances now are for the life I'm building in this small town by the ocean where nobody needs me to be anything other than exactly who I am. Patricia invited me to Thanksgiving dinner next month. Her son and his family are coming and she thought I might like to join them rather than spending the holiday alone. I said yes. Not because I felt obligated or because I wanted to avoid seeming rude or because I thought I owed her for her friendship. I said yes because I wanted to. Because it sounded nice. Because I'm building a chosen family now, people who see my value and treat me with respect and understand that relationships are supposed to be reciprocal. That's what was missing with Jessica and Derek. Reciprocity. The fundamental understanding that relationships are a two-way street, that love means caring about someone's well-being even when it's inconvenient, that family is supposed to add to your life rather than drain it dry. They took and took and took, and I gave and gave and gave, and we all pretended that was normal. That was love. That was what family meant. But it's not. Real love doesn't leave bruises. The real family doesn't steal from you. Real relationships don't require you to disappear in order for the other person to shine. I know that now. It cost me everything to learn it, but I know it, and that knowledge has set me free in ways I'm still discovering. The cottage is quiet tonight. Just me and the sound of the waves and the gentle creaking of this old house settling. I made myself dinner earlier, pasta with too much garlic because I can, because no one's here to complain about the smell, and I ate it slowly while reading a mystery novel that's probably trash but I'm enjoying it anyway. I took a long bath with expensive bath salts I bought myself because they smelled like lavender and the package was pretty. I put on soft pajamas and made tea and now I'm sitting here by the window watching the last light fade from the sky. This is my life now. Small and quiet and completely my own. No drama. No crisis. No one demands pieces of me I can't afford to give. Just peace. Just space. Just the radical act of existing for myself. They lost everything trying to build a world without me in it. The house, the cars, the equipment, the brand deals, the followers, the carefully curated image of success. It all collapsed because it was built on sand, on stolen money and exploited love and the assumption that they could take forever without consequences. They're in prison now learning that actions have consequences, that people aren't infinite resources, that you can't steal someone's life and expect them to keep smiling and saying yes. And I gained everything in the one world where they no longer exist. Not everything in terms of money or possessions or status. But everything that actually matters. My health. My peace. My sense of self. My right to take up space and have needs and say no without apologizing. My freedom from the constant fear that I'm not enough, that I'm failing, that I'm letting everyone down by the simple act of existing. I thought for so long that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything. That love meant giving until there was nothing left. That family meant tolerating any treatment because blood is thicker than water. I was wrong. So completely, devastatingly wrong. Being a good mother should have meant teaching my daughter about respect and reciprocity and the value of other people's humanity. Love should have meant mutual care and consideration. Family should have meant safety and support, not exploitation and abuse. I didn't teach her those things. I taught her the opposite by example. I taught her that taking was acceptable, that my pain didn't matter, that she could treat me however she wanted and I'd still be there. I enabled the person she became, and that's something I'll have to live with. That's my part in this tragedy. I gave her everything and in doing so, I taught her that everything was hers for the taking. But I can't carry that guilt forever. I can acknowledge my mistakes without letting them define the rest of my life. I can understand that I did the best I knew how with the tools and understanding I had, even if my best wasn't enough, even if it actively contributed to the problem. I can forgive myself while still refusing to go back to that dynamic. These things can all be true at once. The stars are coming out now. I can see them through my window, bright points in the darkening sky. There's something comforting about stars, about the way they've been there long before my problems and will be there long after. The universe is vast and indifferent, and my suffering is a tiny blip in the grand scheme of things, and somehow that's not depressing. It's freeing. My pain doesn't have to be cosmic or meaningful or transformative. It can just be pain that I survived, a difficult chapter in a life that's still being written. I'm 68 years old. If I'm lucky, I have another 20 years. Maybe 30. I spent the first 40 giving them away. I'm not spending the rest that way. These years are mine. This life is mine. This peace is mine. I've earned it with every sacrifice I made, every boundary I finally set, every time I chose myself when it would have been easier to fold. They said my life never mattered. They were wrong. My life matters intensely, beautifully, completely, to me. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. If you've ever walked away from people who never saw your worth, you understand what I'm saying. You understand that leaving isn't the same as giving up, that boundaries aren't the same as cruelty, that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is letting others destroy you. You understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop loving people who use that love as a weapon against you. And if you haven't walked away yet, if you're still there taking the hits and swallowing the pain and telling yourself it's not that bad or you're being dramatic or family is worth any cost, please hear me. Please listen. Your life matters. Your future matters. Your health and happiness and peace matter more than anyone else's convenience or comfort or cruel demands. You deserve better than to be used up and discarded. You deserve better than to be invisible in your own life. It's terrifying to leave. I won't pretend it's not. The unknown is frightening, and family ties are strong even when they're strangling you, and there's always that voice that says maybe you're wrong, maybe you're overreacting, maybe you're throwing away something precious over nothing. But that voice is lying. You're not wrong. You're not overreacting. And what you're throwing away isn't precious, it's poisonous. I'm living proof that there's life on the other side. Good life. Peaceful life. Life that feels like it's worth living instead of just surviving. Life where you matter, where your needs are valid, where you're allowed to take up space without apologizing for it. It won't be perfect. I still have hard days. I still grieve what I lost, even though what I lost was mostly an illusion. I still feel the weight of 40 wasted years and wonder what my life could have been if I'd learned these lessons earlier. But even on the hard days, even when the grief hits like a wave and I'm crying in my cottage by the ocean for the daughter I loved and the relationship we'll never have, even then, I don't regret leaving. Even then, I'd make the same choice. Because I'm here. I'm alive. I'm myself. And they no longer have the power to take that away from me. Her future matters. Mine never did. Those words were meant to break me. And they did, in a way. They broke the version of me that believed my only value was in what I could provide to others. They broke the fantasy that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, loved enough, it would somehow be enough. They broke the illusion that blood relation guarantees love or respect or basic human decency. But out of that breaking came something new. Something stronger. Something that knows its own worth and refuses to negotiate it away. Something that understands love shouldn't hurt this much, shouldn't cost this much, shouldn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. They said my life never mattered. But in the end, mine was the only one still standing. I'm sitting here in my cottage by the ocean, healthy and healing and whole, building a life that brings me peace. And they're in prison watching everything they stole from me crumble to dust. They lost their freedom, their reputation, their careers, their home. They lost the future they thought they were building. They lost everything. And I lost them. Just them. The people who hurt me, who used me, who told me I never mattered. That's all I lost. And you know what? I'm okay with that. More than okay. I'm grateful. Grateful for that slap that woke me up. Grateful for those cruel words that finally broke my denial. Grateful for the pain that pushed me to choose myself for the first time in my life. This is my ending. Not revenge, though I got justice. Not happily ever after, because life is more complicated than that. But peace. Real, hard-won, precious peace. The kind that comes from knowing you survived something that should have destroyed you. The kind that comes from building a life that's truly yours. The sun has set completely now. The ocean is dark except for the reflected moonlight. My tea has gone cold, but I don't mind. I'm just sitting here, existing, being present in this moment without needing it to be anything other than what it is. This is what matter feels like. This is quiet. This peace. This freedom. This life. And it's mine. Finally, completely, irrevocably mine. If you've ever felt invisible to your own family, if you've ever been told your future doesn't matter, if you've ever taken a hit and been expected to smile through it, I hope my story gives you permission. Permission to leave. Permission to choose yourself. Permission to understand that mattering to yourself is enough, even if it's the only place you matter. They were wrong about me. And whoever told you that you don't matter? They're wrong about you too. Your life matters. Your future matters. You matter. Don't forget it. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if they try, if they hit you or steal from you or tell you that their dreams are worth more than your dignity, walk away. Pack your bag. Close the door. And build yourself a life where you finally, beautifully, undeniably matter. Because you deserve that. We all do. And that's the truth they never wanted us to know. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real stories like this one and click on the image showing on your screen to watch another real story. Trust me, it's more crazier and heartwarming than you can ever imagine. See you in the next story.